World War I and World War II opened many doors for animation as a whole. In the beginning of times, animation wasn't always viewed as great. Rather, it was foolish and was meant for the naive. That outlook was long forgotten once military personnel were stationed by nearby Walt Disney Studio because it evolved into a new era in which propaganda and the release of emotions were displayed all throughout. Both world wars took a huge toll on those not only in the army, but those who watched it firsthand. Animation was able to be close buried emotions forward while entertaining at the same time. It then expands more so when the government used its new form of art to convey an eye-catching message and educate in a moral sense about paying forward in regards to the war effort.
The art of animation started to rise during the 1920s, after the end of World War I. Because of this, not many shorts focused on the Great War. World War II, on the other hand, is a whole different story. Many animation studios such as Disney and Warner Brothers were commissioned by the government to create propaganda. This resulted in numerous animated shorts that by today's standards are quite jaw-dropping. Today, the average viewer of these shorts would probably call them racist and controversial, but it's important to remember that these animations are from a different time. Cartoons of the 20th century were notorious for being more risky and mature. For example, Disney! Long before Disney ran out of ideas for originality and became a company consuming beast, they were commissioned by the government in 1941, around the same time when Pearl Harbor was bombed. Disney helped out the government by designing badges and emblems for the military, as well as educational films for the Navy. Eventually, they started premiering their World War II themed animated shorts. When it came to these propaganda animations, it seemed that Donald Duck had a major role in most of them, but perhaps the most memorable short to feature Donald Duck is Der Führer's Face. This hilarious cartoon was about Donald having a nightmare about living in a place called Naziland, a parody of Nazi Germany. Naziland is riddled with swastikas and hireling soldiers, animals, and even inanimate objects. Donald is forced to work in a factory where he is rushed, yelled at, and forced to Heil Hitler repeatedly. Eventually, he wakes up in relief and proclaims how glad he is to be an American citizen. Throughout the short, the song Der Führer's Face, written by Spike Jones, is sung, which is dangerously catchy, and I'm sure got a lot of kids in detention for singing it in class. This short won an Oscar for Best Animated Short in 1943. Another big animation studio that helped out in the war was Warner Brothers, the company behind Looney Tunes. While Warner Brothers did make shorts like The Ductators and Daffy Goes Commando, there is one series they created for the Army that not many are aware of. It features one character that is not as well known as Bugs Bunny or Daffy Duck, and that is Private Snafu. This was not an animated short, but rather a series of animated shorts. This cartoon is said to be made by the Army and only for the Army. It was never meant to be public. However, eventually it did get leaked in 1944. You see, a major problem in the war was that some of the soldiers lacked education and didn't know how to read. This made educating them more difficult than usual. That wasn't until a man named Frank Capera came up with the idea of a cartoon to educate soldiers. Despite how raunchy it was still able to both educate and entertain soldiers. In fact, that was the whole point of many cartoons during World War II, to make people laugh in a time of distress. Many cartoons of that time succeeded in that goal, despite how controversial they are by today's standards.
Alrighty then, what we have here, ladies and gentlemen, are the two ensemble superhero teams comic book covers that take place during World War II era. On the left side, you have the Golden Age Justice League, aka the Justice Society of Warner Brothers DC Comics, fighting against the Nazi Party, and on the right side, you have the Golden Age Avengers, aka the Invaders, created by Marvel, owned by Disney since August 2009. The Invaders are fighting against a supervillain who represents the Nazis, a supervillain named the Red Skull. The story of the untold origin of the Justice Society is about the origin of the Golden Age Justice League, first forming together to put a stop against the Nazi Party and their invasion, and the story of the invaders is about the Golden Age Avengers celebrating their super-heroic ensemble deeds in the War Bonds Parade, and must stop Red Skull, who disguised himself as an FBI agent, and his evil plan.
Both world wars took a huge toll on those not only in the army, but those who watched it firsthand. Animation was able to be close buried emotions forward while entertaining at the same time. It then expands more so when the government used its new form of art to convey an eye-catching message and educate in a moral sense about paying forward in regards to the war effort. All in all, animation was not foolish whatsoever. Rather, it should be termed as a revolutionary change that still to this day has an everlasting effect.
That's all, folks.